Hi anyone who's watching. I'm making this video for a friend who has got stuck on a bit of a dress that she's trying to sew, and she's got stuck on a particular place, so I'm just doing a bit of a thing to help her get her act together and to finish that particular bit off. The dress I'm sewing is this one. It's Vogue 2931, part of their Belleville Sassoon range, and the bit that she's actually stuck with is the booby bow. So we're going to try and fix the booby bow. The instructions are somewhat confusing if you're not a master sewer, or if you haven't done it before, and so I'm just going to give her a hand. So if you're expecting, now that you've found this video, to find a tutorial for the whole dress, it's not going to happen, because no. And if you are struggling just to sew simple panels for this dress, then you picked up the wrong dress. It is marked advanced. It's alright, it's actually not too bad. I've done this dress 3 times now, it's quite... It was a bit confusing the first time I did it. It's actually quite alright once you get used to doing it. Now, the other thing I just need to say before I actually start sewing and showing you what to do is that I am not doing this dress for a one-off event that I'm going to, or for some sort of special occasion. It's not something I'm going to sew and then do just 1 or 2 wears out of before I do something new. I'm actually making this for a burlesque performance, and I'm a burlesque MC as well, and so my dress, when you look at it, when we start talking later on about how to attach the bow to the bustier and the bodice parts of the dress that it gets attached to, when we're looking at that, my dress is actually sewn shut at the back. And what I've done is I've left the seam open under one arm so that I can put what we call a stripper zipper in there. So my dress isn't going to have a nice neat little hidden zipper at the back of it. It's going to have, well, quite frankly, I don't treat my possessions very gently when I'm on a stage. Everything gets dragged around, thrown on the floor, and then a quick costume change is required. And so my dress isn't going to have a nice neat hidden zipper. It's going to be left open all the way up one side under the armpit, right the way down to the floor, and then it's going to get a fucking great solid open-ended anorak zipper in there, the kind that once you're zipped in, it could hold an elephant's boobs in that thing, and it's not going to go anywhere. So just a quick tip on that, actually, which she also asked me about, not just the bow, she asked me about doing a stripper zipper and kind of moving the zipper around. What I've done is, if you look at these pattern pieces, when I'm looking at the right side of the lining, which has got my interfacing and everything else attached to it, so the right side is this side up, the nice neat side up. This side, so the side that is going to end up under my right armpit, is at this end, okay? Because the nice neat side of the lining is going to go against me, and this end, my right armpit, is going to be the bit where the zipper starts. Now, if we look... Let's move that because I don't really need that now. If we look at the other stuff, my nice outside fabric, so not my lining now, my actual dress fabric, when I've got it held up, the rough side towards me, you can see that the same side, the right armpit, has been left free, and I've sewed the back shut, and then we've got the other open end here. So if you're looking at the right side of both fabrics, you kind of need to do the open end, the armpit, backwards. So on the lining, when I sewed the lining and I had the right side towards me, I left the left side of it open, and then, the right side of it open, and then when I'm looking at my dress fabric and I've got the nice right side of it towards me, I've left the left side of it open. And so when I actually assemble the dress, the messy side of the lining goes against the messy side of the dress fabric, and I end up with an open armpit both on the same side. Okay, if that made any sense at all. If not, phone me up, Nick. I don't care. It's fine. I'll explain to you over the phone or we'll FaceTime. Okay, so on with the bow. So this dress has a massive, massive bow on the front of it that kind of decorates your boobies. Not that mine need decorating. They're quite nice on their own. I've got... it's either pattern piece number 5 or I think it's number 4 is the bow, and this is the stiffening. It doesn't matter, the markings are the same. So before I start, actually 2 more things. One is if my overhead fan is annoying you, it's 42 degrees centigrade in Sydney today. I don't care what annoys you because I'm hot and I'm sweaty and it's disgusting. And the other thing is wine. Before you start sewing any big dress, wine is important. Obviously though, around a garment where I've spent a lot of money on some very nice fabric, I want white wine, not red wine, very, very important, in a sippy cup if necessary, which is quite nice. Oh, that's better. And the other thing that I discovered today is this. It's a glass of wine, a single serving of wine, in what appears to be very much like a Capri Sun juice container. And that's been in the fridge all day and it's very, very nice. So I can actually put my cap back on my wine when I've finished having a sip and have it sat next to my sewing machine quite happily. So this was very important to mention because I never sew without wine. Right, so let's get to this pattern piece. Now, what I've done before I switched on my my video recording, whatever, phone, camera, whatever you want to call it, because I already had wine, so I can't remember. What I've done is I've taken the stiffening part and I've put it on the fabric part already, and I've sewed around. So I've stitched it on, now the other thing to note is that I am not using netting as it says in the pattern for this, because like I said, I'm not making a dress that is going to be worn a couple of times to a special event and hung up and treated with great respect. I'm making a burlesque dress that's going to be taken off in a hurry for a costume change and thrown in a suitcase in the corner of a grimy dressing room / toilet / backstage area that's covered in God knows what grime and dirt, and it's going to be treated badly, and I want the bow to stay stiff and to stay upright and not saggy for as long as possible. So rather than use netting to stiffen the bow, what I've actually got is a double layer of the stiffest sew-on interfacing that I could find, and that should hopefully give me a nice upright bow for as long as possible for this dress. So that's why mine is not netting. Now the other thing I've done before I started is that I have taken all of the markings that were on my pattern piece. I know, shock horror, someone making a dress actually uses the markings on the pattern piece and takes note of them and uses them. Fucking hell. Call the president. No, don't, he's a dickhead. So what I've done, because I'm using interfacing as my stiffening, I've just put them on in biro. Literally biro, I know. If anybody, I'm not a professional seamstress. I don't make dresses for a living. I'm not a costumier. So, you know, if you think that's terrible that I've done that in biro and that I've done something terribly wrong, it fucking sucks to be you. I don't care. So what I've done is I've gone round and I've marked all of the small circles on here. And I've marked what they call the roll line as well. So the roll line is marked on here. And the small circles that came on my fabric rather than on my interfacing, I've marked just with a pin, and I've marked all of them with a pin. So each time I've got a bobble head of a pin sticking out of the fabric, that's where my small circle is on my pattern piece. And I've done exactly the same with the other one as well. Now each one of these, and you can see there that they are a mirror image of each other, which is exactly what you want when you're making a dress. Each one of these is one side of the bow on my boobies. So Now, the last thing I did before I started this tutorial, and I know that you asked me about it when we were talking on the phone the other night, is it says to sew invisibly across the roll line. And what does that mean? So what that means is basically you need, across this line here that's marked, you need just to catch up the fabric and the stiffening or netting or whatever you're using for this white bit that I've got here. You need to catch it up just along that line without making a massive row of stitches on the right side of your fabric. So you just need to go along with a hand needle or whatever you've got. I've used my sewing machine, but I've used just occasionally just a few stitches and then nothing, and then a few stitches, and then I've stopped again, and then a few stitches just to mark the point, and then nothing and nothing. Now, the only reason I've done that with my sewing machine and not with a hand needle where I could really carefully catch stuff up is because if you look at this fabric, I'm using metallic brocade, and if I move this around, you cannot see any of the stitching through this fabric. You can't see any of it. It's completely invisible. So I'm going to be able to get away with that. Whereas if you're using netting and something like that satin you were showing me on the internet the other night, you're going to want to catch that up just really carefully in a few places just with a hand needle. So on with the instructions then. So first things first, I'm starting with, where am I starting? I'm starting with instructions at point 11. So I've got to gather the front end of the bow between the small circles. Okay, so the small circles it's talking about on this look like they are these small circles here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hand needle, I'm going to pause this for a second, I'm going to take my hand needle and I'm going to just stitch along to the other end, and I'm going to gather it up a bit, and I'm going to just tie it off. Okay, so I'll be back in a sec.